Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving straight into a fascinating source text that unpacks one of the most debated and heavily analyzed theological concepts in human history, the unfailing depth of Christ's eternal love. Now, rather than taking a theological stance ourselves, we're going to neutrally explore exactly how this text breaks down the characteristics of this love. It's really interesting to see how the source uses its own unique framework to deliver its profound message.
Right out of the gate, the text pulls absolutely no punches. It opens up with this direct, thought-provoking question. Have you ever wondered how much Jesus truly loves you? It's a powerful hook, right? It immediately draws you, the reader, right into its central premise, really setting the stage for what is a deeply personal exploration of faith and devotion.
To establish a baseline here, the source draws a pretty stark contrast. On one hand, it looks at human love. The kind of love that can sometimes fail, change, or just kind of grow cold as life circumstances shift. But then it pits that directly against the love of Jesus, which the text describes as this eternal, unchanging reality that just remains constant forever.
And according to the text's Christian narrative, this wasn't just some abstract philosophical concept. Jesus didn't just talk about love. It was a love demonstrated through definitive, sacrificial, historical action. The source anchors this right away with a famous citation from John chapter 15, verse 13. "Greater love has no one than this, to lay down one's life for one's friends."
So the text maps out this love across 5 fundamental pillars we're going to look at. The unconditional foundation, demonstrated through sacrifice, welcoming the outcasts, an unchanging nature, and an inseparable bond. Let's dive right into the first one.
Pillar 1. The unconditional foundation, loved before believing. A lot of people operate under the assumption that divine love is something that has to be earned through high performance or, doing good works. But relying on Romans 5:8, the text completely flips this premise on its head. The argument here is that this love is totally independent of human success or past mistakes. The text literally says, while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. The takeaway? Before a person even prays, believes, or thinks about God, they are already unconditionally loved.
All right, moving on to Pillar 2. Demonstrated through sacrifice, the cross.
Building on that foundation, the analysis turns to the very real physical sacrifices described in the biblical text. It vividly portrays an innocent figure willingly enduring being mocked, beaten, crowned with thorns, and eventually carrying the cross. And the key point the source makes here is that every single one of these profound sufferings is framed as a deliberate choice, a choice made entirely out of love for humanity.
As its ultimate proof point, the source turns to what is probably the most famous verse in the entire Bible, John 3:16. Here, the cross is framed as the definitive, undeniable declaration of that love. The source presents every single wound and drop of blood as deliberate, tangible evidence of God's immense love for the world.
Which brings us to Pillar 3, welcoming the outcasts, love for the broken.
The text goes on to detail a ministry that was characterized by actively seeking out the exact people that society had heavily rejected. We're talking about the poor, the sick, sinners, and outcasts. It's a truly fascinating historical observation. Where others issued harsh condemnation, Jesus offered mercy. Where society saw complete failure, he saw incredible potential.
And the text highlights Mary Magdalene as a prime example of this. Her story is shared to illustrate one central claim, that this divine love genuinely restores, heals, and gives entirely new purpose to sincere hearts. According to the source, it absolutely never turns away anyone who comes seeking it.
Next up is Pillar 4, an unchanging nature, faithful through seasons.
Here, the analysis pivots to a major theological claim about consistency. Grounded in Hebrews 13:8, the core argument is that while human feelings, people, and just earthly circumstances in general constantly fluctuate, this divine love does not. Actually, let me emphasize that. The text argues that the exact same historical figure who calmed storms and forgave sinners back then continues to offer that exact same peace and forgiveness today.
And that leads us to our final pillar, Pillar 5, an inseparable bond, love stronger than obstacles.
Pulling from Romans chapter 8, the focus turns to the deeply personal implications of an absolutely unbreakable spiritual bond. The source uses this deeply comforting verse to reassure believers of their eternal security and constant companionship. It emphasizes that even in moments of profound isolation or deep struggle, this faithful love remains powerfully present. Think about fear.
failure, sickness, and hardship. The really profound claim being made here is that all of these formidable life challenges, the very things that routinely break human spirits, are fundamentally powerless to sever the bond between believers and the love of Christ. The text essentially says, no way, nothing can break that tie.
Finally, we arrive at the conclusion, the final invitation.
Wrapping up, the source text shifts into a very clear call to action, offering specific spiritual remedies for human struggles. The framework lays it out like this. If you need hope, look to Jesus. If you need forgiveness, come to Jesus. And if you need peace, trust in Jesus. It frames this enduring love as literally the greatest gift ever given to humanity.
To close out its message, the source engages its audience directly with a specific request. It asks readers who resonate with this message to comment Amen and share it with someone who might need a bit of encouragement today. It utilizes community-building hashtags and wraps the whole thing up with a closing prayer asking for grace, mercy, and peace for its readers. So we've explored exactly how this source text systematically breaks down the historical and theological elements of Christ's love. Based purely on the framework the source provided, I want to leave you with a provocative thought to reflect on today. How does understanding the unbreakable and unconditional nature of this love change the way you face your daily struggles? Think about it. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.